speaker today is Major Gabriel M. Haugland, a native of Mount Vernon, Iowa. He enlisted into the Iowa National Guard as an airborne infantryman in 2004 and was commissioned as an infantry officer in 2007. He led an infantry platoon in combat in Afghanistan in 2010 to 2011 before breaking his leg in a non-combat injury. He then transferred to the JAG Corps and now represents military victims of sexual assault as a Regional Special Victims Counsel for the National Guard Bureau on active duty. Please welcome Major Gabriel Haugland.
Well, good morning, and thank you for that warm welcome. I want to say thank you to your school, staff, administrators for having me this morning. And there's one other group. Are there any high school seniors that have signed their enlistment paperwork that are going into the military? Stand up. Any others? Are there any juniors? I think you can sign that early too. Any juniors that have signed? I don't want to exclude it. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I want to make it, I think we talked about killing the lights. Thank you. Besides, my face is getting red, so this will be. I want to make it clear this morning that the words I'm about to speak are mine alone. They don't represent the opinion or position of the Department of Defense, the U.S. Army, or the Iowa Army National Guard. I was a freshman at Marshalltown Community College on September 11, 2001. I was asleep in my dorm room. My dad called to tell me that we were under attack. I knew that day that I would eventually join the military. About 10 years later, I lost a dear friend in Afghanistan. Sergeant Brent Mayer of Honey Creek, Iowa, was killed in a massive IED attack on April 11, 2011. Sergeant Mayer stood about 6'4". He weighed about 250 pounds. He was a great leader, great friend, and he was the type of man you'd want beside you in a firefight. I wear a black band on my wrist every day so that I'll never forget his sacrifice. So today I thought it would be appropriate for us to recall exactly what it is that our veterans, and every one of them has done this, have pledged their lives for. You see, our founders believed that our Creator had endowed us with certain inalienable rights, rights that could not be surrendered to the state because they were given by God. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our veterans have fought to secure these rights. Our founders recognized a few other rights they determined were indispensable to our republic. Freedom of speech, press, freedom of religion and petition, the right to keep and bear arms, conditions for quartering of soldiers in your homes, the right to be protected from unreasonable search and seizure, the right to due process, the prevention of unjust government taking of your things, the right to a speedy trial, the right to a trial by jury, freedom from excessive bail, and freedom from cruel punishment. There's even rights listed in there that were reserved to the states, the principle of federalism. We know these principles collectively as the Bill of Rights. So the question today is this: what is a veteran's role in defending, protecting, and preserving these rights that we hold so dear? Perhaps a Union soldier during the Civil War would have told you that he was defending the right of the slave to be free, the right to liberty. Perhaps an American soldier during World War II would have told you he was fighting to defend our very homeland after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Had the Germans or the Japanese succeeded, all of the rights that I just went through most likely would have ceased to exist. Perhaps an American soldier during the Korean and Vietnam conflicts would have told you he was defending our way of life against the spread of communism, a system that killed between 85 and 100 million people during the 20th century alone. It's a good song. Perhaps that Vietnam veteran, Korean veteran, would have told you he was fighting to prevent the mass killings that were commonplace under communist regimes. You'd just be rounded up, taken to a camp for re-education. Perhaps an American soldier during Desert Storm would have told you he was fighting to prevent the further use of chemical weapons and poison gas, which we know Saddam Hussein employed against the Kurdish people in the Halabja prison massacre on March 16, 1988. Perhaps an American soldier during the global war on terror, our current conflict, would tell you he was fighting to prevent the spread of radical ideas, systems which strip women of their rights, treat them as property, where the terrible ideologies allow for honor killings, public stonings. I know from my own experience in Afghanistan that we were fighting not only to punish the Taliban and Al-Qaeda for 9/11 and to prevent an attack like that from ever happening again, but for the little girls in the villages who were literally being poisoned, having acid thrown in their faces to prevent them from going to school. And of course, as every soldier will tell you, he was fighting for his buddies to his left and to his right. So can you imagine the spread of these ideologies if it weren't for the American soldier? Can you imagine our way of life today if the Germans had succeeded? The rebel South, the imperial Japanese, communist Russia, fascist Italy? How about North Korea? The Viet Cong, Saddam Hussein, Al-Qaeda? I can imagine it because history is littered with examples of what happens to a society that refuses to honor and protect these rights that we so often take for granted. You see all these countries and their actors adhere to different principles, much darker principles. Principles of coercion and compulsion. And as they threatened our rights, the American soldier was called upon to preserve our own by force. So if you appreciate reading the newspaper on Saturday morning without fear of being put in a re-education camp for being on the wrong side of a political issue, thank an American veteran. If you like the fact that we have newspapers at all, the right to a free press, thank an American veteran. If you like to worship in peace on Sunday, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that as much lately. But free from the terror of suicide bombings or state control of the church, as was the case in pre-war Germany, thank a veteran. Or if you choose not to worship at all, secure under your First Amendment right to freedom of religion, thank a veteran. If you value knowing that the government can't just come into your house, take your things without due process, or that you'll have a fair trial if accused of a crime you didn't commit, thank a veteran. If you like to travel, maybe to Europe, France, Germany, experience foreign cuisine, and practice those language skills that you learned in school, thank a veteran. After all, not only did he liberate those countries, he then proceeded to rebuild them. If you like going to the mall or to a dinner free of the thought of rocket attacks from a hostile neighboring country, which is the case in Israel, thank a veteran. If you like going to school, maybe some of you don't like going to school, or knowing that you'll be able to send your kids to school someday, especially your daughters, with the ability to study as they please and to get an education without fear of having acid being thrown in their face, as is the case in Afghanistan, thank a veteran. Or maybe you're a protester and you feel the urge to burn a flag, as part of your demonstration, secure under the First Amendment right to free speech, you too should thank a veteran. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to an American hero. On the screen up there is Carolyn, would you please stand up? This is my wife, Carolyn, of local Clear Lake. Go ahead. She's been by me through a deployment, years of training. After I broke my leg in Afghanistan, I was like her third child, so she has put up with a lot from me. This is Merle Ogden, my wife's grand-uncle. He's the son of Mr. and Mrs. William H. Ogden of St. Ansgar, Iowa. Another way of saying this is that he's my wife's grandmother's brother. My wife's grandmother is Mary Lou Nicholas of Clear Lake. Merle enlisted into the Army in June of 1942 at the age of 22. At this point in the war, the World War II had already been raging for 3 years. Merle knows what he's signing up for. He wants to be a pilot. So he attended Flight Academy at Mira Loma, where his name was eventually put on the Hall of Fame. That's him completing basic training. That's Merle Vernon Ogden, aviation cadet. In 1943, he officially received his officer commission as a second lieutenant in the Army. He graduated from advanced training with over 1,000 other pilots, including Chinese, British, and American cadets. And after graduation, he was given 5 days of leave, which he used to spend time with his family back in Iowa. And then he returned to California, knowing that he was about to head off to war. This is the letter that my wife's grandparents' parents received. You can read it. It says, this is a Western Union telegram. William Henry Ogden, St. Ansgar. Regret to inform you that your son, Second Lieutenant Merle Ogden, was killed in an airplane accident 17 January 1944. Request disposition of remains. World Glass Jr., Captain, Air Corps Commander. Sadly, during a training flight on January 17, 1944, Merle's plane lost power. He surveyed the ground below him. He had an obvious choice. He could attempt to land his plane on the extensive high school grounds of Narbonne High School. But there was a problem. All the kids were out for recess on the grounds. And landing his plane safely on those grounds meant that some of those kids might die. So as his plane lost power in its final dive, Merle intentionally maneuvered his P-38 Interceptor into the only empty lot in the neighborhood near the school. It burst into flames on impact, and he died. A hero. As it happens, that empty lot was a site of what was called a victory garden. As part of the war effort, the government rationed foods like sugar, butter, milk, cheese, all the things we take for granted today. Canned goods. Labor and transportation shortages during the war made it hard to harvest and move fruits and vegetables to market. So the government turned to its citizens and encouraged them to plant victory gardens. They wanted individuals to be able to provide their own fruits and vegetables. Nearly 20 million Americans answered that call. They planted their gardens in backyards, empty lots, city rooftops. Neighbors pooled their resources, planted different kinds of foods, formed cooperatives, all in the name of patriotism. I think it is somehow fitting that even in death, Merle chose victory. He chose country over self. He chose to spare the lives of those children at Narbonne High School. He chose to give up his own life. So today, every day, as you go about your business, remember the sacrifice of Second Lieutenant Merle Vernon Haugland of St. Ansgar, Iowa. Even yet today, as you face the choice between a hard right or an easy wrong, a hard right or an easy wrong, make that choice in honor of Merle. Choose the hard right, even when it's not easy, like he did on that fateful day. Let Merle's example be a guide to you. This is a poem that my wife's grandmother wrote upon learning that her only brother had died. Merle was my brother. He was brave and true. He died for his country, for me and for you. He loved Uncle Sam and the P-38s to fly through the sky away from man's hates. He cherished this America with its rocks and rills, the little red schoolhouse, the templed hills. He loved his freedom. As you and I, he died for his country. Why? He wanted us to be free. Your friend and you, the English, the Dutch, the Russian, the Jew. The last words he said were, "Goodbye, boys." We'll see him no more, nor will we hear his voice. We've many things to remember as time go by. His curly hair, his bright blue eyes, his great love to fly. In our window hangs a new gold star. We're proud of it. A star. He sacrificed his life, gave up his love. He died a hero. He's gone up above. When we see him in heaven, hear his voice again, we'll pray for freedom for all of Earth's men. So today I'm hopeful and thankful for the next generation of Merle Ogdens, some of whom are sitting right here in this room, who will again rise up to meet the challenges of the 21st century and the bad actors that are sure to challenge our principles against him, just as men like Merle Ogden have done since 1775. So before I go, I have another challenge for you today. Freedom is always only one generation away from extinction. I ask you, what kind of generation will you be? Will you defend personal liberty and freedom, or abandon it? The choice is yours, and the world will soon be too. I encourage you to approach the world like Second Lieutenant Merle Ogden, with bravery, courage, sacrifice, and honor. May we all go forth on this Veterans Day mindful of men like Second Lieutenant Merle Ogden, who died so that we may